opportunity to invite our principal ma'am to receive her blessing words. Ma'am.
Okay, Dolly. Due to some prior commitments, Principal Madam is not present here. So we can continue forward. And we have received all the best received message from the Principal Madam. So let us continue with our process.
Okay, sir. As educators, we are lifelong learners, and platforms like these are testaments to our commitment to enhancing our skill and knowledge. This faculty development program is designed to explore Android, iOS, Flutter, React Native, and Angular. It is a perfect blend of a theory, practical, and real world insights as crafted to meet the dynamic demands of modern education. Before we dive into the session, let me remind you of the opportunities this FDP provides. It's not just about gaining insights, but also about connecting with like minded professionals, sharing experience, and broaden, broadening our horizons. So let's make the most of this program. Countless efforts from our HOD sir is shape this FDP. I would like to invite our HOD sir, Professor Mahendra Khambalia, to share his kind word with us. Sir.
A very respected faculties, and it is my welcome you all to the faculty development program practical approach mobile application development, which is being scheduled to 10th January 5, organized department LDR Gandhinagar, a college of KSV. Before we proceed, share my gratitude, Honorable Chairman Sir Vallabhbhai M. Patel, became President, whose visionary pivotal for the success of this great institution. Though he couldn't due to some prior, we seek his blessing for the grand success of FDP. To be under the guidance of principal ITR and Dr. KSV, Dr. Rajpura Madam, acknowledge the support which are instrumental in this program. Welcome, Madam. Give a brief introduction before we start. First, Sarva Vidya, founded by our Chaganba in 19, has a philosophy of 100 with the principle of Bogabla. Various educations are currently at Kadi and Gandhinagar. University GC started in 2000, under which there are 20 constituent educating bachelor's and research programs. I am feeling proud. And department is organizing various events. This FDP to enhance teaching and learning process. The main object of FDP is to exploit of programming application development. Okay. This era of see in GPT, one can easily and programming stuff. Also watch videos from and learn new things. But still we are lacking this interaction. So such FDPs are very helpful to enhance our interacting with the renowned of their fields. It is my great pleasure to welcome eminent speakers, Professor Rachna Mehta, Professor Nirma University, Mr. Mayur Prajapati, mobile application developer, Mihir Panchal, senior and React Native developer, Infosystem, Arek Vaibhav, senior engineer Saligram in Miss Kinjal Patni, developer iOcean Tech. All the speakers are their respective fields. Hope and expect participants will at all the sessions attend interactively to gain maximum knowledge from our experts. I wish a grand success DP and fruitful participants. I thank us and look forward to insightful sessions and interactive discussions. Have a great journey ahead.
Principal ma'am,
Yes.
I would like to
Respected has joined us. So please continue.
I would like to take this opportunity to invite our principal ma'am to receive her blessing words. Ma'am,
Oh, thank you. Are you able to hear me? My voice is coming?
Yes,
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 ma'am.
madam.
Audible.
Ah, yes. Morning to all. Dignitaries present here, members, staff members, students, participants across and one and all here. Staff of Sarva Vidyalaya and Vishwavidyalaya College of LDR. It's pleasure you all online faculty program mobile technology is organized by MCA department under the of our 100-old Sarva Vidyalaya model with people of Karbala spearhead dynamic leader of our honorable chair Shri Vallabhbhai Patel. Our university is flourishing all spheres of academic innovations. University, as you all know, that known for taking strategic initiative, education and its activities. The visionary leadership of our Honorable Chairman Bhai M. Patel initiatives are for students and members with the required for which various activities, events, and different are also established at university level. The national level is also which is taken by the Department of ERP Institute. Here, faculty from nation have participated, and it's an opportunity to interact with each other, their idea, which is very for the overall development of all faculty. I would congratulate our team for event, and I all of you will a productive interactive time. This FDP. You all a grand thanking you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
thank you ma'am for encouraging us.
Yes.
Before we begin, I would like to go over few housekeeping rules for the smooth functioning of the program. Please keep your Microsoft mute during the session to avoid any disturbance. If you have any question, feel free to drop them in chat box. They will be addressed during the question and answer segment. In case of technical issues, please reach out to our support team via chat. Please rename your display name as your full name for attendance purpose. Today, we are privileged to have Professor Rachna Mehta ma'am with us, who enlighten us on Android She is working as an assistant professor in Computer Science and Engineering Department, School of Technology, Nirma University. She has more than 7 years of academic experience and 1 year of industry experience. She received her B degree in computer engineering from LD College of Engineering, Ahmedabad, and ME in computer engineering from SCET, Surat. She is currently pursuing her PhD from Pandit Dindayal Energy University, Gandhinagar. Her research area includes recommender system, data analytics and optimization, and graph neural networks. She has authored several research papers in Scoop and SCI indexed international journals and conferences. She is involved in teaching various courses at undergraduate level like object-oriented programming, database management system, data structure and algorithms, design and analysis of algorithms, optimization techniques, data analysis and visualization, advanced Java, scientific programming, web programming, mobile OS, and others. So, without further ado, let us embark on this enriching journey of knowledge and collaboration. Together, let's make this FDP a transformative and memorable experience. Once again, a warm welcome to all. Let's get started. Over to you, Rachna ma'am. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, Dolly, for the introduction you have provided. So to begin with, hope I'm properly audible to everyone. I just need a heads up from one
Yes,
person,
ma'am.
please.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you.
yes.
Good morning, everyone. So it's my privilege to be here to give you insights on the Android application development. So to begin with, I would like to thank Dr. Branta Vora and Dr. Mahendra Kambalia for giving me this opportunity. As already insights have been given that we'll be moving towards the practical approach of it. So to begin with, we'll first of all look into the core basics of what Android development is, the architectural framework and the know-hows of the Android, and then we'll go to the practical approach for the same, hands-on demonstration for the same. Now, just to give you an insights, if you have any queries or anything, just please post it in the chat. And if it's very urgent, you can just let the coordinator know and they'll ask you on your behalf so that we can have a smooth session and everyone can be in line through the entire session. So let's begin. I hope I have the screen. I'll be sharing my screen.
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Yes. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it is
Yes,
visible.
Okay, sure.
yes.
So I'll just minimize this on my part, the Zoom part, so that participants can look into the concepts and the contents over here in the slides. Okay, so let's begin with the Android development. So a very quick introduction on what Android is. So we are not going into more of the theoretical perspective. I hope that most of the participants already know what an Android is, and many of you are the Android users. So Android is basically an open source software stack. Just one moment. Okay, I'll keep it here. Okay. So Android is an open source software stack created for a wide array of devices with a different form factor. And we are the end users for it. We know that Android is available when you are working with a mobile phone, your smartwatch, any other wearables are there. Even the current systems, the home systems are also coming with the Android embedded systems are also there. So we have several devices in a several shapes, size, we can see that Android OS is being used and is one of the OS which is heavily used in all the mobile application development. One, because of the open source flexibility it provides, and second, it provides the designer and the developer a console they can easily extend, whereas the rest of the operating system are proprietary based. Now, when we talk about the application development of the Android, so Android app can be written using Kotlin, Java, and C++ language. So, since the current curriculum across the state, we know that most of the students and even the faculty members are well equipped with Java programming language and C++ language. Whereas the recent versions of the Android now support the standard support is for the Kotlin. However, you can develop it easily using the Java language, which is more preferred as far as the audience is concerned. So the rest of the session, which I'm going to convey and whatever we are talking about, we'll be talking with perspective to the Java. However, you can easily do it using Kotlin or you can do it using Groovy, which the current Android version support. So I'll give you a brief insight on the same at the end of the today's session. So Android SDK tools compile your code with any data and resource file into a APK or an Android bundle. So we'll just understand how the Android platform architecture works. So when we talk about Android or any operating system on the hand, we have a typical architecture that it follows. So begin with, this is a bottom-up approach, and the bottom-up architecture, as you see, that at the end we have like a Linux kernel. Just one moment, I think it's not completely visible, so I'll keep it in this mode. We have at the base we have a power management, or rather a Linux kernel, which is the main part of handling the rest of the processes that we carry out. So it provides us the driver to support with the various things that we need to work or that we need as a developer. Like it gives us a support for the audio, it gives us a support for the display, camera, Wi-Fi, memory, drivers, and every such thing. Then above it, the second layer is a hardware abstraction layer. So whatever drivers we are having at the base, so in order to communicate with those driver at the upper end, we have a hardware abstraction layer. So now we know that over this span, the mobile phones have evolved, and we can also see the various supports. Like previously, we didn't used to have the camera or maybe a GPS sensor or the Bluetooth support. So as and when whatever the support you want to integrate, so all such things you need to mention over here, or rather your mobile OS will be mentioning in this particular layer. So that is audio support, Bluetooth support, camera, sensor. So this is a hardware abstraction where the actual support is provided. This is the drivers where we mentioned that which we are going to use. Then above it, we have the main part, which is our Android runtime, which is responsible for the smooth executions of the layer beneath and the layer above. Next we have is a native C and C++ library. Even though most of the development is carried out in the Kotlin and Java, but the base libraries that our Android need are provided or by the native C and C++ libraries. Above it, we are having a Java API framework. So this architecture we are purely discussing on the base of the Java, that we have a Java API framework where it provides us to communicate with the data using a content provider. We have a view system in order to frame the layout of how your Android looks like, the various application looks like. We have several other managers responsible for the individual activity, like for the basic activity of the screen, the location, the notification window, etc. like that. And at the last, we have the system application that the end user see. So this is the basic architecture that any Android operating system, which I'm talking about, is basically the various versions of the Android follows. Now, to begin with, this is where we actually start. When we talk about an Android application, especially on a developer perspective, we have four major app component which we need when we are developing an Android application. So these are the building blocks of the Android application. So each component is an entry point through which the system or a user can enter your app. So it's not necessary that only the application that you click in, that is the entry point. There are several things that you see on your screen, maybe a pop-up notification that battery is low, or maybe a Bluetooth is connected, right? So all such things are available over here. One, you have an activity, which is basically how your Android application you are going to use. That is whether you are using a calculator, whether you are using maybe WhatsApp, or whether you are using a Facebook. So those are your actual applications. So those can be configured easily using the activities. Then you have several services. you have broadcast receiver, and you have content provider. So these are the four major app component that we need to understand before we actually begin the development process. So we'll go into the details of each one of them in the subsequent slides. So the very first thing that we are understanding of a application component is activity. So activity is the entry point to interact with the user. So activity is basically a single screen given a user interface. You see a login screen on your maybe a email application. You see a inbox, you see a draft, you see outbox, you see a compose screen, or you see a setting screen. Each one of them is individually an activity which is responsible for a particular task. Now, when I talk about an activity, let's say I'm considering an email application on hand as of now. So as soon as I click, let's say a Gmail is there or any other mail application which is available, as soon as you click on the mail application, the very first thing you see is maybe a login screen most of the time if you have not configured it. So the login screen is the first activity screen. As soon as you enter your credentials and you click on a login button, you will be able to see the screen of an inbox email. That is an activity. You click on a particular email and it shows you the subject, the content, and the email body, everything. That is another activity. You move back, you go to a composing an email. That is an activity. You go to a draft. That is an activity. You go to a trash, you go to a spam. Each individual screen that you are seeing are different activity, and any particular Android application can be a collection of such activities. Now, similarly, if I give you another example, which is of a WhatsApp. Now, you see a WhatsApp, you have several different chats available from different person or a group. Now, that is the first screen of the WhatsApp. That is an activity. You click on a particular user, you see a chat. That is an activity. You go to a group and you see a chat. That is a different activity. You see status, you see updates, or maybe you see your profile. That are different set of activity. So when I talk about an activity, that is each and every layout which is present in your application is an activity. Even if there is a slightest change, let's say you are seeing maybe a date over here, and if in the next slide the date is not available, that is a different activity in an Android application development. So whatever you want user to see, or whatever you flexibility you want to provide, you are supposed to design an activity for the same. So that is the very first thing that we are talking about when we are developing an application. Without an activity, you cannot develop any Android application. So activity allows us to have facilitate with us the following key interaction between your system and the application. So it can allow us to keep track of what the currently user cares about. That is what is currently on the screen. Prioritize the previously stopped processes, help the application to restore a previous state, and it allows us to interact between the activities, between the applications. So this is a in general activity life cycle that we are talking about. So as soon as you create an activity, maybe let's say you are creating a login screen. So once you launch an activity on your application part, it goes to an on create function, which is responsible for creating this activity. Now, once the activity is created or once the activity is launched, that is you go to a on start, that is on start button, which will start your activity if it is not previously activated. If it is previously activated, it will go to a resume, that is on resume. Then the activity starts running. So this is where the user comes into the picture. So this part is a developer. You are supposed to design that on create what things should be visible to the user. Then the activity runs. So now this activity, when you are starting any particular application, there are two things when you talk about an Android. The activity can go in the background or it can be an foreground activity as well. So if the activity is there, if there is an already existing activity, then and if a new activity is created or new activity is being executed, it will come in the foreground. Now, the several other things which you can carry out, that is you can pause. Let's say if I'm using my WhatsApp application, if using a Facebook application or maybe an email application, and suddenly I am receiving a call from someone. So obviously, the call activity will be my foreground activity. The WhatsApp, maybe Facebook, Instagram, email, calculator, or any other thing which is currently I'm using will go in the background. Now, these are basically how the activity stack goes into the picture. That is, the activities can be imposed on the other activity given a priority. So that is how the activity runs and comes into the foreground. Then you can pause the activity. So as soon as you receive a call, the task that you are doing, let's say you're watching a video, it will get paused. So that is how it works. And then when you leave an application, you are stopping an activity. Now, when you stop an activity, it does not mean that you are deleting the state of the current activity. That means you have stopped the application process as of now, but however, you wish to restore the application at some point of a time. So that is where you maintain your application state, and then at the last you destroy an application. So as soon as you destroy an application means you are completely killing the application. You won't be able to go back to the state where you're using. So let's say if I talk about an calculator and I'm doing some summation, so as soon as I just completely stop the calculation application, it will not show what task I have carried out. But if I open it up again, I can resume back to that state. And if I completely destroy, I'll have a fresh screen to start with. So this is the first major component when we talk about an Android application development, that is the activity. The second component that we are talking about is a service. So a service is a component which runs in the background without direct interaction with the user. So when we talk about a service, there are several type of a services, like maybe a bounded service, foreground services in an Android application. So the purpose of the service is to run in the background without any user interaction. That is, it does not require a user input every now and then. So you are composing an email and parallelly you are listening to someone, maybe through Zoom application, or like most, I don't know, maybe some of you might be doing, like you're composing and doing your task as of now, and you might be listening to me parallelly on your mobile phone, right? So that is how the service works. That is, it runs in the background without interaction with the user. It does not require a user input every now and then. So like playing a music in the background while the user is in a different app, or it might fetch the data over a network. So you see your Wi-Fi services are easily working, your data services are easily working. So those are the example of the services that we know. The third application component that we are going to see in further detail is a broadcast receiver. So broadcast receiver lets the system deliver event to the application outside of a regular user flow. Let's say there is a low battery, your mobile is not having a sufficient battery, or maybe a power connected, or maybe shut down due to some other interruptions are there, or time has been changed, or you are capturing a screenshot. So at that particular point of a time, you receive a pop-up, or maybe you receive just a flash of a notification. So this particular notification are delivered with help of the broadcast receiver. So that is the purpose of having a broadcast receiver in your application. The next and the fourth component is a content provider. So content provider manages a shared set of application data which you can store in the file, either using a SQLite database or on the web or on any other persistent storage that your application can access. So when we are talking about application, we know that we want to maintain our data. So there are some applications where you are actually maintaining your data. Maybe you are developing an application for capturing a picture and then editing it at a later stage. Maybe you are capturing a video, you are capturing the data input from the user. So at that point of a time, if you want to store the data, we go to the content provider. So that is how the four application component of the standard Android framework work. So for any Android application that you want to develop, that is a full-fledged application, you will need activity, you will need services, you will need broadcast receiver, and you will need content provider. So they have different set of a task, and each application that you are having can be a combination of each Android application you are having can be a combination of multiple activities, multiple broadcast receivers that are being registered, multiple content providers are there, and services are there. And the last part, in order to work with all this particular four application components smoothly, we have what we know as a intent. So what actually the intent is? So intent is basically an asynchronous message which activates the three components that we have discussed out of the four, that are the activity, services, and broadcast receiver. So when we talk about the smooth flow of one activity to the another and going back to the previous activity, or maybe going from one activity and activating a service, or maybe activating a broadcast receiver, what we use is basically the intent. Without intent, you cannot develop any Android application. So for a smooth functioning from moving from one place to another, what you need is an intent. So one can think of them as a messenger which requests an action from other components, whether the components belong to your application or another. So intent not necessarily belongs to your activity. So let's say, just for an quick example, I'm using a WhatsApp, and you see that nowadays in the WhatsApp, the bottom part, you have a pin like button, which is used to maybe share a photo, share a location, share a contact detail, or you also have a camera icon in order to click a picture. So ideally, the WhatsApp is an application. The rest of the things are provided by the different set of an application or the hardware on your mobile OS. So how you actually access them. So intent are the way you access them. If your application is not providing the data, or if your application is not providing the support, you go back to the other application which has a support for the same, and you access through that. So the intent is the key part in accessing those resources. So intent is abstract it's a description of an operation you want to perform. So there are two categories of the intent. One is an explicit intent, and the second is an implicit intent. So explicit intents define actually what you want to use. So let's say I have three different email applications on my mobile phone. Normal email application that the operating system provides. I have a Gmail application which I have downloaded. I have a Hotmail application which I have downloaded. So when I talk about that, I want to send an email from my application now, or maybe I want to share a picture over an email, right? So which particular email application I want to use? So let's say I'm saying that I want to use the Gmail application specifically, then it is known as an implicit, sorry, that is known as an explicit intent. But when I talk about that, I want to share a picture on an email, but I do not know which application to use on prior hand. So at that time, we are talking about an implicit intent. So explicit intent are basically where you actually mention that this application is going to be used when I am doing this particular task. That is an explicit intent. And when you talk about an implicit intent, we don't know. We just know that we need to perform this task using a suitable application on my mobile phone. So that is the intent. So this was all about the components that we are having. Every snippet of the code with where we are going to see this particular part of the component occur every now and then. So this was just a brief for those application component. So now we move to the second part of understanding the Android application lifecycle. So this is just a brief overview of how an Android application lifecycle will be. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to set up your environment. So as you know that there are several Android versions available in the market. I hope everyone are aware about that. The latest is the Android 16, whereas the 15 is the stable release. So most of the things you will be discussing will be with perspective to the 15, version 15. Once you set up your environment, you write the necessary code, you set up in assets which are there that you need to work with. You build and run. So when you are executing, you also mention this particular thing, that which Android version will be compatible, that is, you are providing a backward compatibility or not, or which Android version this application support. Then you iterate over it, that is, you carry out the task of it debugging, profiling, and the testing. And the last thing is to publish. So this is a general life cycle of any Android application that you are developing. So let's move to the very first task, that is the development of an first Android application. So when you carry out the application development, there are few things that you need to take care about. So once you create a new Android project in your Android Studio, you need to mention an appropriate selection. The second thing is you need to work with the three different set of a file, that is the Android manifest, activity underscore main, activity.java. So these are the three files which you need to completely understand for your application to work in a smooth manner. Then the third thing that you need to do is you need to create an emulator through AVD. That is basically the mobile or the virtual device that you want your application to run in and you want to test in. And the last is the execution of the developed Android application. So we'll keep a halt on the theory portion as of now. We'll go to the Android Studio and see the very first application development, and we'll come back to the theoretical portion at a later stage. I think there is some question. Okay, sorry. Okay, so I hope everyone are able to see my Android screen. So what I am doing right now is I'm creating a new project as of now. So as you see the Android screen, I hope everyone have installed the Android application. So you can just follow up the steps parallelly. So you click on a new project over here. Now, as soon as you create the new, as soon as you click on the new project, you have several options available. That is on which particular device or for which particular device you want to create a project with. So right now, as we are discussing the mobile application development, I'll stick to the phone and the tablet version. So you see that there are several versions available, or there are several templates available which you can select, and based on that, you can directly create your application. That is maybe with application with a bottom navigation, application with a navigation drawer are there, login activities are there, game activities are there. So there are several options available with us. Okay, I think there are some questions. Okay. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is, since we are going to understand the concept with perspective of the Java, I'll click on the empty views activity. I do not want anything in my activity as of now. I just need an empty view. So I'll click on this particular empty view activity. So very first thing is, based on the template of your Android device, you need to select the appropriate selection. Okay. I'll click on the next. So as soon as I click on the next, you see that there is an option of giving the details for the application. So let's say I'm creating an application. I'll give it as demo application. So you need to provide the details for the application. The very first thing we are providing is the name, the package name, the location. Then the important thing is the language selection. So usually if you see a template and if it is providing a support of the Kotlin, means the recent version, you can only use the Kotlin language. You will not be able to use the Java language. So please make sure of this while you are doing the activity selection. You click on the language. So that is, let's say, as of now, I'm selecting Java language. Then which minimum SDK you want to support. So as you know that Android provides a backward compatibility. So as soon as you see a new release, or maybe you see a new release of an operating system patch up, or you see an application patch up, they're also compatible with the previous versions of the Android. So you need to select that which version you want to support. So let's say I want to support the latest, that is Android 7, not the latest is the perspective of this one. So you will also see a prompt indicating that how many devices will be compatible, or how many your application will be compatible with. So your app will run on approximately 97.4% of the device in the configuration language. So as you know that the newer version support the Kotlin. So build configuration will keep it as it is, will not change anything, will keep it at the Kotlin, and then you click on the finish. So please make sure while you are developing an Android, or while you are designing an Android application, do not keep any other heavy loaded application on your system, because as soon as you open an Android, it might take few time in order to import libraries, in order to build your project in Gradle and everything. So this is the first application in the Android screen we are talking about. So let's understand this part first. I think I need to hide this. Okay. So I'll go back to the first demo application, which we have created as of now. So you see, this is the screen of the demo Android application. So as soon as you see, as soon as you create an application, you will have a two splitter, one splitter for your project directories and the files and everything. And the other part is your configuration and the editor panel that you are having. So this thing first clearly, and then we'll see the rest of the code part over here. So you see this, I have created a demo application one over here. So I have a several folders which are being provided by the application development directly. So you have a support for the Gradle, you have a support for the ideation, then we have the actual application folder that we are going to work with. So in this particular application folder that you see, you have the source files respective to your Android application. Now see, this is very much important to understand the file and the directory structure that we are having over here. So you see, we have in the source, we have the three different folders over here. The very first folder that we are discussing as of now is the main, where your actual code resides. Now you see, over here, I have the several things available. The first thing that I am talking about is within the source folder, I have a main folder where my actual code will lie. Then I have the two test folders available over here, which will help me to carry out the Android testing framework in order to see whether my application is running in a proper manner or not. So now let's go into this one. So once the application is properly built, that is, you will see the bottom progress bar that your configurations are running, your application is developed, or your application files are being imported. You will be able to see a structure like this, a file structure like this. So now let's understand this particular structures one by one. So as of now, I'll just open up all the drop downs which are available to me. So let's get back to this particular slide, which is very important. So create a new project in the Android Studio that we have done. So now let's understand the three main files that you are going to actually work with. So the very first thing you will be able to see when you create a new application is this file, which is a main activity.java, where which is basically the controller part of your application, where you will mention the what resources you want to use, what resources you want to carry out, or what task you want to carry out with those resources, what flows you want to carry out, what services, broadcast, receiver you want to carry out. That is the first file. That is main activity.java, provides the controller part of your entire application. So once you have created, let's say one screen, two screen, or multiple screens which are there. So with respect to each and every different screen that you are having, you will have a different Java files. Along with that, with different Java files, what you are going to have is one activity underscore main.xml file. So this XML file provides us the actual UI and the look and feel of our Android application. So we'll dwell into the each file in detail in a later stage. And the third file that you need to be aware about is the Android manifest.xml file. Uh, Now, when we are talking about the Android application development, so let's say I'm having multiple screens available, login screen, compose screen, inbox screen, outbox, draft for an email application. So whatever screen or whatever activities that you are going to use in your application, you need to mention it in this Android manifest.xml. So Android manifest.xml is a file which acts as a entry point in your application. It informs your application that I want to begin with the login screen. The login screen should be the first place I want to go when I start my when I start my application development. So as soon as your application is created, you will see some of the standard features which are available, or the standard settings which are there. That is whether you want to create the backup or not, data extraction rule, the icon, the backup content, label, the icon, how your icon should look like, whether you are supporting to right to left support or not, your theme which is there, which is your target API. So all such things, the whatever you have selected when you are doing the application or when you are creating a new project, all such things will be set up over here in the first part. So now let's understand this file first. So Android manifest file is very important file in your application. If you do not have Android manifest.xml, you cannot execute, because this is the point when you start your application, your Android application will first of all go to the Android manifest.xml. It will look into the Android manifest.xml entirely. It will see which are the various activities which I am having, and out of this activity where I need to start with. So as of now, since we have created only one activity, which is the main activity, so you can see the XML content for the same. So we have the activity over here, that is the start and the end of the activity. It will mention the name of the activity. So now here what we actually mention is basically we mention Java file name. So here you see that main activity.java is where your controller logic for your application will be present. So over here you mention the name of the file that you are going to work with. So that is the first thing, irrespective of whether that will be the first activity or not. Okay. Now whether you are exporting the Android details or not, that you need to mention. If you want to execute your code properly, you need to mention it as true. Then the next are the intent filter. Now, recently, when discussing regarding the application component, I mentioned that application, whenever you are using any application component, that is for application component, you will need an intent to work with. So, intent and the intent filters are the way through which you can do the communication between your application or within your applications which are there. So, here within using an intent filter, I'm mentioning that what action I want to carry out. Now, whenever we are creating an action, action indicates that what task you want to carry out with your activity which is there. So, as we are having a main activity, I want to create this activity is the main, and what I want to do is I want to launch this activity when my application starts. So, this is the by default support that will be provided when you are creating any activity. So, this is the file, the Android manifest.file will work as the indexer that how many activities I'm having in my application, how many services I'm having, how many notification controls I am having, how many broadcast receivers I am having, all such thing. Even if you want to provide an hardware support, let's say I want to provide a camera support, I need to mention it in the Android manifest.xml. So this is the entry point of your Android application. Okay, now let's move to the file number 2, which is the main activity.java file. So in the main activity.java file, the standard template as you see over here. So we'll understand the core part of it over here. So this main activity Java file extends the app compact activity, which provides us the support in order to execute our Android application. So as we have understood that as soon as you create your Android application, the very first thing that we do in an activity is the on create function. That is when you start an activity, it will go to the on create function. So you see on create function over here. Now this bundle provides us the previously stored instance if it is there. That is, let's say if we are resuming back to our application state, we can get the details from here. And then we are calling the super dot on create saved instant to resume to the previously saved instance. Now the rest of the support which are there, that is basically the UI support. The edge to edge enable is basically the support of your screen, that how your screen should look like, and the edge to edge supports for your entire application. Then you also have the support. I'll move to the each one line in detail. So let me just keep it like this. I'll come to this line at a later stage. Then we have set on apply window insert listener. So whenever you are having any, whenever you want to set an event handling for the main task that you want to carry out. If you remember that we have mentioned that the action that we are going to carry out is intent action main. That is whatever task which we are going to do with this activity. This is my starting activity, so that whatever, if there is any other event handling, or if this particular activity is being registered anywhere else, I can do it with help of an window insert listener, and I have this particular settings available. So I'm not going into the details of setting as of now. We'll understand the another important part of it. So even if your code is not having this particular part, you can easily execute. So these are the two mandatory things that you need to have on your application, that is whether you want to go to the resume state or not. And the second thing is the content view. Now, what actually is this? Without this, you will not have any look and feel of your application. So as I have mentioned, Android manifest is the starting point. The main activity.java is the controller or the logic that you are going to provide with. The third file where your actual UI is present is the activity underscore main.xml. So whenever you are using any Java whenever you are designing your controller logic, you need to mention that where my layout is, where my UI is present. So this is where your UI is present. So R over here stand for the resources. So let me be clear for this, because this is very important to understand before you develop. So R stands for the resource folder, which you are having over here. So you can see that RES is present. So within the resource folder, I have several subfolders available. So within the resource folder, go to the layout, the subfolder of the layout. Within the subfolder of the layout, the activity underscore main is the folder, activity underscore main is the file where my actual UI components are present and how my UI should look like is present. So whenever we are talking about R in the subsequent part of the code, we understand it as the resource folder. So these are the three files that we are having as of now. That is the manifest, the activity, and the Android underscore main.xml. I'll come back to the project directory in a while. So now let's go to this particular activity underscore main file. So this is the file where we will actually provide our UI detail or how your look and feel should look like. So within this, the very first thing that we need to mention is the layout. That is how your components will be placed. And the second thing that we need to mention are our actual components. That is whether I want a text box, whether I want a radio button, whether I want a checkbox, whether I want a scroll option or an image or anything that I want to do, I need to have it present over here in the activity underscore main.xml file. So now let's break down this file and let's see the other components which are being there. So you see these three buttons are provided to me on the top of the screen when you open the XML file, especially the layout XML file. When you open, you will see three buttons over here. The first one provides you the code, that is the XML code. The second one will provide you the XML code and it will show you the UI. So if you're doing it for the first time, it might take a few moments to initialize it. So this is, I'll give a moment for this for the initialization. So you can see the initialization over here. So in this particular part, let me just zoom this one. So this is how your application will look like, or your activity will look like rather. Since in my application, I'm only having one activity, which is a main activity, and this particular XML provides me the detail of that activity. The very first thing that I'm seeing over here is the layout. That is how it should look like. And the second thing which I am seeing is the component which I am going to use. That is a text view component. So just to understand the text view easily, it is nothing but a label that you are having in the other application, maybe HTML or any other thing that we discuss. Okay, so this is how the part of the designing comes into the picture. So this is a code part and this is the UI part. So you can do parallelly. You have a first option for the code, you have a second option for the code and the UI both, and you have a third option for only the UI part. Now, this is very much important to know that how your components will be laid out. So now let's go back to the split screen. So in the split screen, you can see that this is the code. You have an option for the palette. You have an option for the component tree. You have the actual UI present, and you have an option for the attribute. So whatever task you do over here will be parallelly reflected over here in your XML part. I'm explaining this just for the understanding purpose as of now. We'll come back to this one later stage for the pure understanding when we see the last option available. So currently I am having one text view which shows text that is a hello world. Now let me keep one more thing, that is a button over here. Okay, so as soon as I keep a button over here on the screen, you will parallelly see that I'm having some details being added in my code part. However, you need to also provide the other attributes and the other details for that. So this button is particularly initialized over here. Now, this is how you can easily do the drag and drop over here for the components that you want to work with. So now and as soon as you drag and drop a particular component, you will see the subsequent XML code over here. Now let me go to the third option, which is basically the design part only. Because whenever you are working with the XML part or whenever you are writing an XML code, sometimes it's not possible for us to take all the things into consideration. So let's see this one in detail now. Okay. So this is my actual screen which I am having, which is following a constraint layout. And initially what I am having is a single text view component which is present over here. Now, the things that we are having on this particular screen, the first thing is the palette. So this palette gives us a support of the various Android components that we are having. So let's say you want to have a label or rather a text view in particular Android terminology. You want to have a button, you want to have an image view, you want to have a recycler view which provides us the same fragment as we see in a WhatsApp screen. You have a fragment container, you have a scroll view, you have a switch. So any component that you want to work with, you can simply drag and drop from this particular palette. So you can see I have a text component, a simple text view. If I want to take an input from the user, I'll have a plain text option available over here. Let's say I want to use ask user a name. I want to work with the password over here. I can also drag and drop a password over here. So you can see a password component that is over here. You can see maybe I want to have a PIN number, rather a numeric PIN number. I can select an option from here. So depending on the type of the component that you work with, you can just simply select and drag and drop over here. The second, we are having the various types of the button, maybe simple button, image button, chip buttons are there, radio checkboxes are there that we can easily work with. You have different widgets available for the image view, for the video view, progress bar you want to keep over here, you can easily drag and drop over here. So let's say your data is being loaded or your data is being saved, and accordingly you can show a progress bar, maybe in a circular form or maybe in a horizontal form. So it will show you the progress, maybe 10%, 20%, 30%, and so on. So you have the different layouts. Now, one thing to understand, what we are talking about are your UI components. Your layout, the look and feel of how your actually the components will be placed are also a part of this palette. That is, you want to follow a constraint layout, you want to follow a linear layout, and so on. We are going to discuss this thing in a detail in a while, so I'm not going into the depth as of now. Then you have the container. So container are actually the things where you can dump your other components multiple times. So let's say I have one recycler view, just to have a note of it over here. So this is my recycler view. Now within the recycler view are basically the components where you can have multiple such sub-components present. So let's say within the recycler view, I want to have one image over here. So it will ask me what type of a image you want to select. So I'm just right now keeping the default image which is available to me. I want to have one text view. Now see, this recycler view is already having some components populated, so you might not be able to see the rest of the components which I'm dragging and dropping. So this particular components, whatever you want to have, you can simply drag and drop over here in a recycler view, which will give you a WhatsApp-like structure. Just to have an example of it, you see a small image icon, you see the name of the user, you see the chat which is there. So any such thing that you want to create where you have a reusability, you can use a recycler view. Now, next, there are several other things available. You have a helper for your guidelines, you have a layering, you have a banner or the groups you can create. You have some of the components. Let's say you want to have a ad view and the map view that the Google directly integrate. So you can easily integrate it over here as well. Or you can have some of the legacy layouts or the components or the containers which are there directly from here. So these are some of the things that you need to understand first, that whenever you want to work with any particular component that you are having, you can simply drag and drop. If you are not good with XML, it's okay. We don't need XML as of now. We just need how your components actually look like. Okay. So now let's understand the second part, which is this particular screen. So as soon as you drag and drop your components, you will also see a component screen, which will show you the various components that you have selected in their presence or their order hierarchy. So let's say I am having this particular three component over here. That is, one is a text view, one is a editable text, and the second is the third one is the password. So you can see this is how they will look in your application. So the white screen that you are seeing is basically how they will actually look. In this screen, the teal screen that you are seeing will give you an option to select the various other attributes of it. So you can see there is a zigzag line over here. These are the lines for their attribute setting, that where this component should be the layout is concerned. So now the first thing in the designing is your palette. The second is the design screen. The third are the attributes. Now, what things you want to set? You want to change the color, you want to change the font, you want to change the position, anything layout, you can mention it over here in the attribute. So there are several things that you can mention with respective to the layout. You want to set the height and width of the component. You want to see the bottom and the top constraints, all the things you need to do or you want to work with for the attribute, you can do it easily. So let's have a hello world text over here. Since I have clicked on this one, so the current attribute selection is of this particular text view that I am having. So let's do some modifications over here. So I've changed the text to hello Android over here. So as soon as you change the text over here, maybe after a moment or so, you will be able to see the reflection over here for the same. Now let's do some more modifications, which we can easily see. I want to keep it as bold. I want to change the text appearance. I want to keep it as, let's say, a body content with a font family that I want to change. Let's say maybe just to notice the difference that we are having, maybe a cursor. Then I'm changing the size, let's say 60 sp. I want to change the color to red, let's say. Okay. Okay. So now you see that I have done some of the attribute selection from here. Now, once you are having your component, once you have selected the component, many a time we want to change how they look like. And there are several things with perspective to that, their position respective to the entire template available, their position with respective to the sub-components which are present over here. So you can easily do it through your attribute panel over here. So when you are designing any particular Android UI, you don't need to worry. You can simply just drag and drop the things from the palette. You can see the look and feel, and you can change their attributes over here. So whatever you think do at the end, you can easily look it up over here in the XML as well. So this is the great flexibility that Android provides. You don't need to worry about the attribute. You don't need to worry about the look and feel or everything. So this is how your actual structure looks like for your Android application. Now let's head back to the directory again. So in this directory, you have a manifest folder, which acts as your starting point, as I have already discussed with you. Then within the Java, you have a three sub folders available. The first folder where your main activity is present is basically your controller part. I'll keep it as a controller to keep the things reminding, because this is where your actual code will be present. The next are the two Android. So you have instrumented in the Android test that you want to carry out. So you want to check whether application is running properly or not, or whether you want to introduce test cases. You can easily mention in these files. In the third folder, which is important for us, is the resource folder. So whenever you talk about our layout, when you talk about our drawable or anything, all such data will be coming from this particular resource folder. So I have already explained you the Android underscore activity underscore main.xml, which is a layout file, which is present in the layout folder. Then you have the launcher background, launcher foreground XML present over here, which will show how your activity, whenever it is launching, in the foreground and the background should look like. Then you have the icon folder available over here. Now see, the IC launcher which is present, the launcher is present over here. You can see several options available. So now let's understand this one. I'll keep it slow over here. So whenever you are developing any Android application, your Android application can execute on any particular mobile version. So let's say some people keep their Android font expanded, that they see only 9 applications on their screen. Some ones will see 16 applications on the screen. Someone will see 25 applications on the screen. The same Android application is also available on a wearable device. It is also available on the tablet. It is also available on the other smart devices available, right? So according to that, whenever you are developing your Android application, and if you want to make it compatible across devices, you need to mention every such icon files over here. So every such icon launcher files you need to mention over here in the map folder. Then the next folder that we are having over here is the values. So many a time we want to set some values over here. So whenever I'm referring black, the hash code this should be followed. Similarly, some string components are there. So as of now, when I talk about app underscore name, it will refer to the demo application. Now, string resource folder are usually the practice thing whenever we are having the data spanning over multiple activity and the same set of the code data is being reused. So you can mention it over here and later on just reference it over there. You have a folder for the themes as well. So where you want to mention the theme of your file. So if you remember, we mentioned that the theme of the file, the launcher which we are going to use, all the things which we are going to use over here will be coming from our resource folder. So resource folder is where how your data is coming to your Android application. Your Java folder is actually the logical folder or the controller part, and the manifest is the Android entry point for your Android. So this is how the Android structure looks like, or the Android Studio looks like. Okay, now let's head back to the other features available over here. You have a support for the notification, for the Gradle support. You have a device manager, and you have the running device. So let's go over here. So you see this device manager is present. So whenever you are developing an Android application with a particular operating system perspective, or maybe with a particular Android version support that you want to do, you can select that what type of a device you want to create. So you can create a virtual device over here. So when you click on this option, it will allow you to select a particular hardware for which you are developing an application. So let's say you are developing a phone application, a tablet application, or a wearable device is there. So according to the application that you are developing and according to the mobile phone that you are going to work with, you can do a selection from here for developing your application, for testing your application and everything. So you can click on a next. It will allow you to select a version over here, which particular release you want to select. Now, whenever you are doing this particular part, many a time it will occur that if you are doing it for the first time, you need to import the hardware profile, and then and only then you can go to the rest of the versions which are there. So since I'm using, let's say I go to some previous versions which are there, right? You can see, and you can see that which particular image or which particular API version you want to go with. So whichever will be compatible will be available to you directly. And then you can simply click on the next. You can give your AVD a name, that is your virtual device manager that you want to work with. And you can see which version it is going to support, and you can just click on the finish. So as soon as you click on a finish, you will be able to see those virtual devices in the device manager. In the last part of this is the running device, which particular device is open when you want to check your application which is being executed. So now just for a quick glimpse, we'll execute this. And while it is executing, which might take a moment or so, we can have a quick Q&A if you are having any doubts for the concepts that we have seen as of now. Because the later stage will be the part where we will understand the Android components and we'll come back to the programming. So I'll give a moment for this to execute, because since I'm running this application for the first time, it might take some moment to run. It might take some moment to import the libraries which are needed. So any question and answers from your side?
No, ma'am.
I think since I've minimized. Yes, any QA from anyone? Because this is very much mandatory to understand the Android Studio structure before you develop or before you impart knowledge to someone else. So if you have any queries as far as this perspective is there, we can have it. Maybe you can unmute and ask, or maybe you can drop it in the chat. Okay. So let's do one thing. While the application is being executed, it will run, which might take a moment or so. Let me see if it runs right now. You can see that I'm getting a notification that the application is being installed successfully and the run is Gradle build is also finished. So you can see a pop-up screen over here where my application will be executed and will be reflected. So this is Hello Android, which you know that we have already changed some attributes for this particular content. You can see a name over here where you can enter the details. So let's say I'm entering my name. Now see, there are a few things, if you observe it very keenly, you can see it over here. So now I'm entering a name over here. You can see a name hint over here. I'm entering my name, let's say Rachna. So you can see there are some bullet points you are going to see, which is actually the password field. So it is mandatory for you to mention that how your components will look like in the placement of the component. So if you do not provide any placement of the component with respect to the parent screen or with respect to the subsequent screen, everything will be on the top left. So here, right now on my top left, I am having my editable text component. I'm also having my password field, which is present. So both the things are being now configured to the top left, since I have not mentioned their layout position according to the constraint layout which I am using. So this is usually the error, or rather I would not say it as an error. This is usually the mistake that we or most of the students do when they are developing the application for the first time, and they try it multiple times to set the layout here and there. So whenever you are doing this particular part, whenever you are designing a code for this one, just let me go back to the design screen, and you need to properly see that whether your constraints are set or not. If you see over here, if you see this zigzag line, so this zigzag line indicates that constraints are set, and the constraints are set according to the top of the screen, according to the left and the right panel of the screen, and according to the bottom of the screen, the constraints are stretched and they are being set. And similarly, you can see it over here in the XML part, that is this constraint bottom and starting to the parent which you are having. So if you do not, whenever you are using this particular layout, if you do not mention the constraint, your components will all sum up in the top left, will be imposed one upon another, and they'll not look good when you are developing an application. So this is a usual standard mistake that people do when they are developing the application for the first time. So now let's go back to this running device. So you can see whatever components that we have set, we can easily see it over here. And this particular AVD allows us to do various things. You can power off, you can have, you can volume up, volume down. So whatever you can do on your Android application, so you can directly either do it on the emulator which is there, or what you can do is you can directly connect with your Android mobile phone. You can through a USB, and you can also do the application development over there. So for that, you just need to have your developer options on, and then you can easily do it. So I'll go back to over here. So I can see my home screen over here. I can go back, I can just drag up over here, and I can see the applications which I have developed. So you can see these are the green symbol one, which is the standard icon which is available to me. So I can see all such applications. Whatever you develop, you can see it over here. Once your APK has been built, that is, if you see, whenever you run an application for the first time, it will build up an application, and you can simply see it over here. You can click on this application, maybe any other application that you are having. So let's say I'm having another demo element application. So I can simply work with any application when I am using this AVD. I don't need to worry about the rest of the application, whether they are currently being executed or not. Okay, so this is regarding the concept of the first application development and understanding the Android Studio. Now let's head back to the theoretical concepts that we need to understand before we move to the next part. So we know how the development of the first Android application covers. So now let's understand the layout and the UI structure, the various components which we are going to have. So whenever we talk about the Android layout or whenever we talk about the Android components, so whatever components that you are going to use, whether it is a widget, whether it is a text view, whether it is a button, whether it is a layout, all belongs to the category of the view group and view. So there are two types of the component. One are standalone component and the second are the container components. So container components are where you can place all the rest of the component. Let's say on particular screen, I want to keep username, I want to keep password, I want to keep a submit button. So I need to use a view group for the same. Whereas this individual component, that is my text view, whether my password or the button, are basically the view. So I have this set. The view group are basically the containers and view are basically the standalone component which cannot independently have can be there in your application. So a layout defines the structure of the UI. Just now we have seen that how our application looks like. You have seen the UI component over here. So whenever you are defining this, the very first thing that you need to mention in your XML file is basically which layout you want to use. So this layout, also known as your basic view group, allow you to have the rest of the views or the components present. So defines the structure of a user interface in your application, such as activity that we are talking about. So all elements in the layout are built using a hierarchy of the view and the view group. Now where you can see it, let's see it over here. You go to a design, you see a component tree. So this is the component tree where you see your view group and where you see your view. So this is my view group, विच इज अ कंटेनर कंपोनेंट. कंटेनर यानी कि वो कंपोनेंट जहां पे हम बाकी सब कंपोनेंट्स टेक्स्ट बटन रेडियो बटन प्रोग्रेस बार और एनीथिंग दैट वी वांट टू कीप we need to have one container component and the rest of the things that you are having over here are basically your view components which are there. So two things we need to have, the one is the view and the second is the view group. So view usually draws something the user can see and interact with, whereas the view group is invisible container. So you know that I have used a constraint layout over here because I'm well aware with my code. But when you look over here, when you see the design screen or when you see the screen running on the emulator, you will not be able to know which particular type of a layout I'm using as of now. So this view group are usually the invisible and the view are the viewable components that we are talking about. Now, Android support various types of the layout that you can have for your components to be placed. So when we are talking about the components, we know that we have text, button and everything over here. Now you want to keep your components in the horizontal orientation on a vertical, on the vertical orientation, on the horizontal orientation, one after another. You can use a linear layout. The second and the most used is the constraint layout, because in the constraint layout you see that this component will be placed over here with respective to the second component. This component will be placed according to the parent component, so you can use a constraint layout. The next is the grid layout, so you can just have the grids of the rows and the columns. You have a tabular layout where you can mention, you can expand a row, you can expand a column and have your component over there. So that is the fourth layout. So apart from this, we have several other layouts, maybe a relative or a frame layouts which are there. So what are the tasks of this layouts? That is, they provide you the structure, how your component should be placed. So constraint layout connects view with constraints. Then you have a linear, horizontal or the vertical row. The relative layout, views relative to each other. Tabular layout in the row and the column format. The frame layout shows one child is a stack of the other, of a stack of the other children which are there, and the grid layout in the grid form that we are having. So you can choose from any one of this layout before you start or before you place the other UI component. So just to understand this particular part, I'll go back to this XML in a code form. I'll delete this particular code. The first and the last line, because the most of the XML snippets that you see, you need to have the start and the end tag. So as soon as I delete the layout, which is basically my view group, you will see the rest of the things coming in the red, indicating an error. And when you see over here, if I do not have my layout, I cannot have all my components which I have placed. So you can see I'm only able to see a text view over here, but I'm not able to see any contents over here. The reason being that I do not have a view group and I cannot have a components over here. So if I want to have the multiple components, I need to have an appropriate layout first. I need to mention the details of the appropriate layout, and then I can mention the details of the views which are there. So this is how the layouts work in the Android. So now let's go to the second part of it, which is UI, the UI of the Android, or how the views you can use. So just now, as I have walked you through the various palette options available. So if you look at your mobile device, whatever screen that you see is a UI. Whatever you see is a view. Now, when I talk about a view, a small text can be a view, a button can be a view, image can be a view, a simple pop-up notification can also be a view. So when we talk about a view class, I have kept in some of the options available, which you can directly refer. So views subclass are basic UI building blocks, like a display text is there, a simple label is there, edit text options are available, buttons are there, scrollable options are available, image view, video view are also options available with us. We also have the group views, that is basically the container components. So without container components, you cannot do anything. You need to have a container component in order to have the subsequent components which are present. So this is just a quick part of the view components. Like you can have button, you can with help of an edit text, you can take phone number from the user. You can have the slider, checkbox, radio button, on off switch, which are there. All such things that we want to use a view component. Okay, so before I move to the next part of the event handling, I'll take a hold over here. Now let's move back to the Android application development. Let's develop our Android application. So I have few things on the hand. So I'll go back to the screen over here. So I'll just close this demo application as of now. So since everyone are now aware of the directory structure, we'll head back to the actual application development. Okay. Before we understand the code part and the development part over here, the very first thing I'll do is I'll rather run the application to understand how it looks like and then come back to the code for you to understand the code basics and the rest of the UI and the event part. So there is a quick exercise which I want you to do. I just want you to note what all things are happening on the Android screen, which we are going to see right now on the emulator, and then relate it back to the code which we are going to understand, or the applications or the practical approach which we are going to understand. So I'll keep a hold over here. Okay. So you can see the Android demo screen right now. So this is the my entry point screen which I am having. It mentions welcome to Android demo. You can see several other things, buttons you can see over here. So let me zoom it one by one. So this is my screen. You can see several things over here. So I'll zoom in and zoom back to understand it clearly. Okay. Can anyone tell me how many things you see, how many view components you see on the screen? Are you there? Sorry? Six components. Okay, that's right. Okay, any other thing that you see over here apart from the six components? If anyone is answering, please be louder. Okay. So you see a screen over here. There are a few things which I want you to note at the first. Obviously, there are six components available. Welcome to Android demo. I have several button options available over here. The very first thing I am having is a basic activity. The second is a student form. I have a login screen. I have one broadcast receiver and I have a calculator. So now let's walk through the application. So the very first thing that I'll click over here. Now, please make sure to keep a note of the task that we are doing. I'll click on over here. So as soon as I click on this basic activity, I see a prompt over here. I see a text view over here. And the text view shows hello path. So this is just a basic message which I have kept it over here. So this is the first thing that you see when you click on the basic activity. Uh, Now let's head back to the same screen, that is the home screen, which I'll call as of now over here. Then the second part which I will click is on the student form. So as soon as I click on the student form, it will allow me to enter some of the details of the student. So let's say I'm entering a detail XYZ, ages, let's say 20, male, grade, maybe let's say 10, and I click on, let me minimize it first. I'll click on a submit button. So you can see that whatever details I have mentioned, it is being also displayed on the another screen, which is there. It shows the name, the age, the gender, and the grade which I have entered over here. So as soon as I click on the submit button, I'm able to go to the screen. So I'll go back to the previous screen. I'll go back to the previous screen. Please make sure to note what I am doing and what you can do to improvise this application that we are going to develop. Okay, the third option which I'm having, or the application which we are going to discuss, is the login screen application. So here the login screen is being displayed. I have the fields to enter the username, to enter the password, and to enter the login detail. So let's say I'm entering something, Rachna, and I click on a login button. How many things do you noticed? It is showing me two things over here. One is an invalid username or password. Please try again. And the second thing you are going to see is a battery level over here, which is a 80%. So there are two things they are being occurred when you are trying to execute this particular activity, or when you click on the login button over here. Now let me change this one to user, and let me enter password 123. Okay. Let's go to the bottom part of it where the actual things are happening. It is showing me the name of the user which is entered, that is a hello user, and it is also showing me the details of the battery level. So that there are two things which are being occurred right now. One is the validation, and the second is the prompt or the notification that you see for the battery. Okay, let's go back to the previous screen again. Now what I will do is I'll click on this calculator over here. I'll come to the fourth part after a while. So you can see a calculator screen over here. So any Android you want to develop, any Android application or the core application you want to extract, you can easily do it over here. So I think it might take a moment for me because it's not responding. Okay, let's wait for a moment. Okay. Okay. So I have developed a very simple application over here just to calculate few numbers. So as I do this, I am entering a 33 plus 6 over here, and I'm just I'll click on an equal to, and I'll be able to see the result for the same. So these are some of the applications that we are going to talk on the hand and discuss on the hand for the practical part. And the last part is the broadcast receiver. So I want you to notice the changes which are being occurred in the different set of the applications that we are discussing. Now, whatever we are discussing are actually the different application, but I have integrated them in my single Android application for us to have a combined perspective of all. So let's click on the last part, which is a broadcast receiver. Okay, what has happened? What has happened on my screen?
It has opened another application.
Okay. Okay. It has opened another application. One. Any other?
And it is not taking any inputs from user.
Okay, that's a static application we are talking about. We do not have any input. Fine. Okay. Any other guess that you want to take? Anyone else? Okay. I'll show you one overview screen. Since being in those who are actually, most of you know that when you click on any Android application, when you have several buttons or the several options available, you want to go back, you want to go to the home screen, or you want to see an overview of the Android applications which are running. So you can easily do it over here and you can see your application state over here. Now you see that as soon as I did a back button over here, I went to some Android screen which is still being loaded as of now. So there are several things which has occurred over here as far as your answers are concerned. One is that and other Android application has been opened. Now what I have clicked on was a broadcast receiver. I want to keep that thought on hold that what has actually happened when we see the good perspective. Fine. So these are the various Android applications that we are going to discuss on hand, or rather they are standalone applications which can develop easily. So now let's head back to the development part. I'll close this running device as of now. Okay, so the very first application that we are discussing over here is the basic activity. So you can see my directory structure over here. I just want you to walk through this directory structure. So you can see that I have one Android manifest file. I have several Java files present over here for the different tasks that I want to carry out. Then I'm also having several different layout files which I am having. So whatever applications that we are talking about, whatever things that we are going to design. So for each one of them, we have different set of the layout files and we have different set of the controller or the Java files and we have one Android manifest file. So as I previously discussed that Android manifest is the entry point for your Android application. The Java files give you the logical part, the event handling part, or maybe communication, whatever dynamicity you want to bring in, whatever task you want to perform within your Android application, you need to do it in the Java. And your UI part is done with help of this layout. So let's take the very first application. So right now, what I have done is this particular welcome screen that you are seeing as of now is the entry point for my entire application, and I can go to the different set of the activities. What you can do is you can create a standalone applications for each one of them and work with it. So looking into that perspective, the very first application which I have discussed is basically the basic activity. So we have already seen the basic activity in the very first part of it. That is how you can create a sample activity when you create a new project. So the same thing is present over here in the basic activity. So for this activity underscore main file is first of all defining the constraint layout. So now let's get into the details of this UI components which are there. So as I priorly mentioned that you need to mention the layout which you are going to work with. So here we are mentioning the layout which is basically the constraint layout. So when we are doing or the default option which is available to us when you develop any Android application or an Android activity, we will get is a constraint layout. So when you develop a constraint layout, what you need to do is you need to set that the layout of each particular component with perspective to your parent or with perspective to your rest of the siblings or the container components which are there. So let's say I'm dragging and dropping one text component over here. So I'm already having a hello path as a message over here. I'll drag in another text component. So as soon as you drag in another text component, we see that this text component is present. It will show the details of this text component. So whenever you are using any component or whenever you select any component, the first thing that you will see over here is Android colon ID. Now this Android colon ID is basically the part through which you can talk to this component, communicate with this component when you are working in a Java file. The rest of the things which you are having, the height, width, the text that you want to display, right, the positions of this component that are that you can easily select from the attribute option that we are having on the right hand side panel. So you have a XML, you have a palette, you have an attribute. So rest of the things are easily configurable through the attribute component which we are having over here. But however, when you are working for this particular part, whenever you want to communicate with this particular component in your Java program or in your controller logic, you need to have the details of the ID of this particular component. So since in this particular application or the first activity that we are talking about, which is the main activity that I have just named it, I have not accessed anything. I have not done any dynamicity. I have just kept the simple text view. So in this XML part, I have the layout set. I'll just delete this part as of now. I have one component where I have displayed the hello path message. So when I go to my main activity, I just need to mention one thing, that is my layout is coming from the file, which is activity underscore main. So these are the two things that you need to remember. First, configure the UI, and the second is mention the details over here. So let's close this one and go to the next part, which is the calculator, where you will understand the logic of the rest of the thing. Okay. So now let's get into the detail of the part of the calculator demonstration which is there. So now I have changed the layout over here. I have changed it to relative layout. Now whenever you are using the layout options, as I have mentioned that by default you will have an option of the constraint layout. And if suppose you don't want to use the constraint layout, you can simply just delete it and you can mention the details of the respective layout. So let's say I want to use a relative, sorry, I want to use maybe, so linear layout I want to use. So as soon as I click or as soon as I mention the details of the layout which I want to use, it will show me some of the default attributes that I need to set, the height and the width of the component. So you can either match it to the parent, whatever the size the parent is having, or you can mention it according to the content that you are going to place. So let's say in this particular place, if I'm having a relative layout, I do not want to use the relative layout. I can just simply delete this one and I can mention the details of the linear layout. Now, when you are working with the different set of a layout, there are some attributes perspective to the layout that you want to properly configure. Let's say if I'm talking about a linear layout, I also need to mention the orientation, whether I'm going to use a horizontal layout, whether I'm going to use a vertical layout or not. Accordingly, I need to mention it. So the first thing about the layout over here, for this particular demonstration, I'll keep it as a relative only. The rest of the different layout are there in the subsequent examples. So relative layout, I have the part, the XML namespace, where I'm getting the details of this particular layout. So this is by default available. Height and width of the layout I need to mention. If I want to carry out any padding over here in the layout, I need to mention, and I need to mention the background of it. Now, if you see over here, I'm just using a simple white background. If you want to work with any particular picture that you have seen in my welcome screen, or if you want to work with any gradient or pattern, that also you can do. So all such things you can configure for this layout as well. Now, I'll keep the UI screen open parallelly. Now, the next thing which I'm having in this particular demonstration, I'll close the palette. You can see over here in this particular part, I have the very first thing I have used is the editable text. Now, this editable text which I am using is used for the display of the numbers which I am selecting and the result component which I am going to use. So, for this edit text option or the edit text I have selected from here. Now, as I have priorly mentioned that for each Android component that you are going to use, you will have the ID component. So ID is through which you can go back to that component, you can extract the data from that component. So if you have seen, okay, I need to run the application again, so I'll keep it on hold as of now. If you see, if I enter if I click on a particular number, if I let's say click on a 2, it will be displayed over here. If I click on any particular operator which I am having, it won't be displayed. If I am having maybe any other number, it will be displayed. And when I click on a equal to, it will show me the result. So this is the usual hierarchy or the flow of the calculator application that we all know. So here I have one edit text component, and then you can see that I have several buttons available. Now you see that the buttons are aligned in a particular format. Now in order to achieve this particular format, I'm using a container, and that container is nothing but my grid layout. So once this particular edit text component which I have selected, that is in order to display the result, which I have kept it as the first, the rest of the things which I am having, the rest of the button which I am having, I have configured in a container, and the container which I am using is a grid layout. So I have a relative layout, I have the text. Within the layout, I'm having another layout which is a grid layout. So if you all remember that whenever we are designing any particular view in an Android, you can have various view hierarchy. So my first view group is the relative layout, and the second view group is grid layout. So I can have multiple view groups embedded in a single UI screen, and I can have multiple UI components as well. So here, once your edit text is complete, just a quick thing on the edit text. I have the ID in order to refer to this edit text. Maybe at a later stage when I want to extract the data from this particular component, I can easily do it. Height and width, the text size, input if their gravity, the positioning according to the layout is there, the alignment things, background, padding, color hints are there, whether you want to focus it or over there or not, whether you want to show some predefined input or not. That is like you can see a 0 over here. So any such thing you want to configure, all this thing you can configure easily with the help of the attribute panel, and the ID also comes when you just drag and drop the component. You always need to remember the ID when you are talking for the logical part. So this is the first thing, that is the edit text. Now the second thing that we are having, so as soon as you go to this particular component or the view group over here, you can see a highlight over here. Maybe let's say the blue highlight on the white screen and the white highlight on the steel screen. So it will show that which component we are discussing as of now or which component we are focusing on. So for this particular grid layout, you can see the height and the width option which we have selected. So for the width, I want to match it to the parent width, and for the height, I want to wrap the content. So let me just change this option. So you can see the difference over here. As soon as I click on the match parent, so this particular grid layout, the size of the grid layout gets increased, and it is still the bottom of your entire application screen. So whenever at the position where your grid layout start, from there to the end of the application will be the height of your grid layout. Whereas the width that we are discussing is according to the parent width which we are having. So you can set this height and width accordingly, maybe either in the unit or maybe according to your parent screen which you are having. So rather than keeping it with the parent, I just want to wrap the content so that till the content where your actual buttons are visible, that is only the size of your grid layout, not more than that. Then where I want to place it, I want to place it below the result display. So you can see over here, I have a result display, which is my editable part where my numbers will be visible. And beneath that, I want to display it. So this is the first thing while you are working with the relative layout. When you are working with the relative layout, you need to also mention the position according to the siblings or according to the other view groups which are present. So since this is the edit text, I want to keep this grid layout beneath this. So let me take this particular code out. I hope that everyone have noticed the difference. So as soon as I remove this part, the positioning part of the relative positioning part of the grid layout, we can see that all the things are occurring on the top left. So it is always mandatory to mention the appropriate layout wise attributes. Otherwise, your components will not be displayed in a proper way. Then I'm mentioning the rest of the things, that how many columns I'm having over here. I want to have 4 columns. How many row I want to have? I want to have 5. The padding options which are there between the components of your grids. So all things that you want to set for the grid layout, you can accordingly set. The next thing that we are having is we are having the similar structured buttons over here for your numbers, for your operators. So for this particular part, I'm not doing any particular attribute selection. I'm not doing anything. I've just selected the button. So you can see that for each of the button, I'm having an ID in a particular text. So I have this for the button number 1, button number 2. So you can parallelly see on the right hand side part, the button being highlighted. button 3, button 4, sorry, button plus. That is according to the row that I am having. So you can see it over here. Subsequently 4, 5, 6 and minus 7, 8, 9 and multiplication. I have a button to clear the input. Then I have a button for 0, for a decimal operator, for the division, and then at the last equal to. Okay. So once all my buttons are present, I'm closing the grid layout. That is my first container. And the second is the relative layout, which is my main container. So you can easily see this one over here in the code perspective, and you can also see it over here in the component tree perspective. So whenever you are designing any application, you need to properly see this one, that how your data will be placed, what are their identifier, what are their attributes. So this is the calculator screen where I am having two different layout, while I am having one particular editable text and where I am having this particular buttons. So if you are creating the application parallelly with me, you can just simply drag and drop a button over here and you can see the button display. So since the button is over here, I am not placing it anywhere else. It is going on the top over here. If I want to keep it in the grid, let's say, I can simply drag it up and keep it in the grid as well. So I need to mention it appropriate position for it to work in the desired manner. Okay. So I'll just minimize this one. So this is how your calculator screen will look like, a basic calculator over here. So let's head back to second part of this one, that is the Java file. Okay, just one moment. I hope the button which we created is not there. Okay. So now I'll close this XML file. Now, when you click on this particular palette, when you see these options available, there are a few things that you can carry out. So I'm just mentioning it so that we can relate with the Java file, which we are going to discuss it next. So whenever I click on a button, first of all, I need to know that what content is present in the button, which particular button is being clicked, whether it is a number or whether it is an operator, or whether is the equal to sign to get the result back on the screen. So for this particular different set of a button, I have different set of the activities that I need to carry out. So which we call as the event handling part. So I'll come back to the theoretical perspective of the event handling later. Let's go back to the Java file which I am having. So I have this calculator demo file. So in this calculator demo file, I wanted to focus on few of the things first. So whatever components that you have, which you are going to use or which are present in your XML file, for each of this particular component, you need to create a subsequent object which are there. So with this subsequent object, you can access these components easily. So first of all, I'm having my edit text over here. This edit text where my result will be displayed. So I am creating an object for the edit text. Second, I am creating one string in order to take the current input of the user, current operator, and the first value, which is 0. So you can see a 0 over here on the screen, which is directly being displayed. Now, when you talk about a button, if you are using a button, so usually the buttons which you are taking into consideration will take the numbers. You have kept a number, but when you click on it, they'll be in a standard string format. So whatever data that you are working on, what you need to do is you need to parse it at a later stage in an integer format in order to work with. So that's why we are having two string component, one for the input and one for the operator. So these are basically the objects that we are going to work with. Is there any previous state that I want to resume to? If yes, it need to be present in this particular saved instance state. If it is not there, I'm okay with it. I'll be starting a new one. Second, where is my layout? So in this particular Java file, the very first thing you need to mention is, we know that I need to mention which is my layout. So my layout is resource.layout folder, and within that activity underscore calculator underscore demo is my layout. That is basically the UI part of my calculator screen. Okay. Now, once this is done, the actual part of the Android logic starts. So for this particular Android logic, whatever components that you are referring. So right now what you are seeing over here, this are just the string types available, sorry, the data standard data types which are available to us. But out of that, this is the only Android component that we are seeing. So only Android component that you are talking about is the edit text. So since I am having one edit text option available over here, I have created an object of the edit text because it is where only my data will be displayed. It is only where I can see the content on the screen. So you can see an edit text and you can see a result display. How I need to mention that this particular result display points to this particular edit text. So for that particular part, we are going to use Android colon ID. So I have already mentioned, मैंने पहले भी बताया है कि जब भी आप कोई कंपोनेंट रखोगे, हर एक कंपोनेंट का एक आइडेंटिफायर होगा. अगर मेरे को वो कंपोनेंट के साथ कम्युनिकेट करना है, वो कंपोनेंट से डेटा एक्सट्रैक्ट करना है, या तो वो कंपोनेंट को कोई डेटा पास करना है, आई नीड टू हैव एन आईडी ऑफ इट. I can even create a component in the Java. I can modify the component in the Java, but I need to know the ID. So which particular component I am referring to? So I need to have an ID for that. So here, result display equal to resource dot id, that is R is for the resource, id over here for the part of the identifier which we have kept. So this is a general practice in order to identify at the rate plus and then id, and the name is result display over here. So r dot id dot result display. So now this, through this particular line of code, that is a find view. View is basically your component, the UI component that you are talking about, through your ID. So I want to find my view with help of its identifier. So this is where what you are doing is you are linking your Java object with your UI component. So basically this is nothing but the component, the view component that you are having, that is edit text in this particular example. So this is mandatory part. So if you want to communicate with your component, if you want to modify, if you want to create some event based on that, you need to store it somewhere. That is, you need to link it somewhere. This concept is also known as binding. So here what we are doing is we are binding our Java object with our Android view, or rather UI component. Fine. So similarly, what we are doing is the rest of the button components which we are going to use, I do not want to change anything in the button. I just want to know that whether that particular button is being pressed or not. If it is pressed, what type of button it is, whether it is a numeric button, whether it is a operator button, or whether it is a equal to button where I should show some output to the user. So same way, the rest of the button that we are having, we are not binding it into Java object. You can do a binding and then do the event handling part at a later stage. But here, since I do not want to modify or do not want to change anything from the button, I'm keeping them as it is. So what I am doing over here for the rest of the button is, for the rest of the button, I'm defining some event handling part. So now let's understand this thing in detail. So first of all, I want to find the button with help of the ID. So this particular part, this particular code remains same. Find view with help of the identifier. So I'm finding view with help of the resource and the ID, r.id. So I want to find the button 1, button 2, button 3, 0, operators or anything. So what I'll do is this part. Now, once this is done, I can either keep it over here as I have done it over here for the result display. I can take it in the variable and do the subsequent part. But if I don't want to store, or if I don't want to modify anything in the button, I'll just simply keep it over here. Then what I am defining is, I am defining the part of the event handling. So whenever you are working with an Android application or any mobile application, you know that what is the event handling. That is, when you talk about event handling, you click somewhere, you drag somewhere, you focus on something, you do any task. You have three major things over here. One, you need to know that what particular event has occurred. Second, whether I am listening to that event or not, and if I am listening, what should be done. So now this is the generalized event handling architecture that a normal programming language or any programming language will follow. Three things: what is done, what should be done, and whether I should do it or not. Now, how it works basically. So as I know that I have a buttons over here. So when I click on a button, I want to carry out some task. So what I am doing is I'm defining the listeners for that. So in a scenario of a event handling or in a generalized terminology of a event handling, we have some event which has occurred. So I'll just quickly walk you through it over here. Or rather, I'll keep it over here. Okay, let me keep it over here. Has event occurred? Am I supposed to do anything? What is to be done? So in a generalized event handling scenario, has event occurred? Yes. Am I listening to that event or am I supposed to do anything? If I'm clicking on a button, do I need to do anything or not? If yes or not, I can, this is the second question that you need to ask, and what is to be done. So now for this particular part, what we are going to use are known as the event handlers. So now this event handler has the very first important thing is a listener. So for this particular button 0, I want to create a listener. I want to set a listener that whenever I click on a button 0, there should be some listener which listens to that whether a button has been clicked or not. If it is clicked, what is to be done? That is the subsequent part of it. So here, with respect to every button, I'm doing the event handling part. That is, I'm creating a set on click listener, because each of the button that you are having, you are only just going to click the button. Now there are several other things that you can do as far as event is concerned. I can just, when you talk about a normal laptop application, you press a button up and down, you click on a maybe a particular key, and you can unpress a key over here. You can select a radio button, you can select a checkbox. In a list, you can select multiple item. So these are different set of the events that can occur in any application, and according to the different application, you can perform different set of the tasks. So here, so let's see this one. For this particular button 0, I'll click on the set on click listener, and there I'm defining that what I want to do is on number click. Now this on number click is basically the event handling part. So I'll keep this thought on hold that what actually occurs over here. So similarly for the rest of the buttons, that is the numeric buttons which I am having, I first find those particular buttons with help of the find view by ID, and for each of this particular button, I am registering an event with help of the on click listener. So for this, I am having the button from the 0 to 9. So to summarize this one very quickly, we are registering a event listener, which is basically the on click listener. So for button 0 to 9, we are registering an event listener with the subsequent 10 lines of code. Now, once you have registered, you need to mention that what is to be done, what actual task is to be carried out. So where it will be mentioned? It will be mentioned on the event of on click. So I have two tasks which is done. I know where actually the event occur, whether I'm listening to event or not, and what should be done. So now let's go back to the on number click, which is there. So similarly, I have also the other buttons for which I have set up the event, but I'll not go into the details of this one. Let's understand them one by one. So once your button, now you can see this particular part of code. This is done in the on create. So as soon as the activity starts, it goes to the on create function. It will carry out this particular task. So now for this on create, outside the on create, I'm having a listeners. Now why am I having it outside? Because I want to have a common listener for all the buttons. So either you can have a specific listener for a specific button, or you can have one listener working for multiple buttons. So in such scenario where you have multiple buttons doing a similar task, it is better to reuse the code. It is better to keep a listener same. So over here, I am defining the view listener, that is view.onClick listener, which I have already initialized with on number click. So if you remember that over here, we have kept for the first 0 to 9 button on click. On number click is basically the event which is going to occur. And who is going to know whether event has occurred or not? That is the on click listener. Sorry for this one. Now within this particular on-click listener, that is a new view.onClick listener, I have a function. So with each and every event that you are going to have, you will have actual event. That is what event has occurred. So here the event which has occurred is on-click. So whenever an on-click event occurs, what is to be done is the part of the code that you write over here in the subsequent line. That is, I want to extract the button. So if you relate to the concepts up till now, if you don't have any queries, so you can easily understand it. But if you have any doubts or any perspective of understanding this code, please just unmute and ask on the go. So see now. As soon as you go for the on click, it will come to this particular point. From this particular point, it will go to a function. It will go to the function of the on click. It will get the view. So now this will indicate that कि which button has clicked. That is, this view indicates your UI component. तो यहाँ पे हमें पता चलेगा कि अगर बटन 1 क्लिक हुआ है, बटन 2 क्लिक हुआ है, बटन 3 क्लिक हुआ है, जो भी व्यू कंपोनेंट क्लिक होगा, for those view component will get an object over here. So whichever view, let's say B0 is getting clicked, B plus is getting clicked, or maybe B dot is getting button dot is getting clicked. तो जो भी व्यू कंपोनेंट क्लिक होगा उसका ऑब्जेक्ट आपको यहाँ पे as a parameter or rather as an argument we will get it. So once we have got this particular component with the once we have got this object कि बटन 0 क्लिक हुआ है, वही बटन को हम यहाँ पे रेफरेंस देंगे, will get the object of the same and will get the text of it in form of a string. मैंने पहले बताया कि आप जो भी कंपोनेंट वर्क करने वाले हो, the default component or the default thing is a string. Whatever data you are going to extract it is a string. So you need to appropriately parse it in the integer format as far as this application is concerned. So for this button, I'm using the functions get text and I want to convert it to the string. So now let's get to the understanding of this particular code. The view indicates the UI component which is doing the particular event. Then on-click listener listens to the event. What is to be done goes in the on-click function. Now what you want to do? So first of all, you extract the object of it if you want to modify, if you want to do any task on it. So as soon as you do this, extract the object that you are having, you can do several things. You can convert it directly into the string format. That is, the object will be converted to the string. You can extract the data. You can extract the font feature. Even you can modify the data using the setter function. So you have a getter function in order to extract the detail. You have a setter functions in order to set some of the detail. Maybe let's say I want to, as soon as the button is clicked, अगर बटन 1 क्लिक हो रहा है तो मेरे को 1 का फॉन्ट चेंज करना है. अगर बटन 0 क्लिक हो रहा है तो मेरे को उसका 0 का फॉन्ट चेंज करना है. मे बी उसका फॉन्ट फैमिली चेंज करना है, उसका फोकस चेंज करना है. एनीथिंग आई वांट टू डू ऑन द बटन or any view component in a Java based on some event handling, that also I can do. So it's not necessary कि XML is the only part to communicate with the component. You can also communicate with help of your controller file which you are having. So here, as you know that whichever button is getting clicked, I want to extract the text from that. So I'll use the get text function and then I'll convert it to string format. Now you see over here, as I priorly mentioned that it is a string data that we are having, and we have taken one string current input to take the data from the user. So let's say user is entering 3, user will click on a button number 3, so current input will be 3. If user clicks on, subsequently user clicks on a 6, then it will be 3 and 6 both. So what I am doing is I'm just appending the data that the user has entered over here and I'm displaying it back onto the result display, that is my edit text. So same way as I mentioned that you can get the data, you can set the data. So this is my on-click listener, which I have kept outside my on-create function. Now, same way, so let's suppose I want to keep this within my actual logic part, I can also do it over here. So let's say The result display is actually the component of my edit text. Now, however, I want to define a listener over here. So I can simply get the object and click on a dot, set on click listener, insert listener, or maybe a drag listener, any type of a listener, key listener, hover listener I want to select, or I want to configure it with my particular UI component. I can simply click on it over here. So as soon as you double click on it, it will ask you to mention that which particular listener you want to mention. So now see this one. This is a part which is important for the event handling. If you have a specific event for a specific button, it will be better to use this approach. But if you have a common approach, then you can use the former part that we see in the button click. तो अगर आपका बटन एक ही टास्क करेगा, वो बटन के स्पेसिफिक ही आपको कोई इवेंट करना है, तो आपको ये अप्रोच यूज करना पड़ेगा, विच आई एम शोइंग राइट नाउ. You can mention the listener and then you can use new the name of the listener. So let's say view on click listener. So as soon as you do this particular part, it will provide you the snippet of the code over here. It will provide you the snippet of the task which a particular event can handle. So you know that when you click on something, you have a on click listener. Now what you want to carry out over here, you can simply mention that you result dot display dot sent. Maybe let's say font features are there, maybe any other thing you want to change. Set text is there. Let's say I want to mention hello as soon as someone clicks on this particular edit text button. So I can do it over here. Same way, I can also so whenever someone hovers over this particular part, I want to do something. So whenever hover, that is just to move a cursor over here, over there, your screen cursor over there, then what you want to carry out. So I can also mention it over here. Same way, for the same particular component, I want to have multiple listeners set. So I just don't want to have the on click listener. I want to have a drag listener. I want to have a key or a focus change listener is there. So whatever type of a listener you want to set for a particular component individually, you can specify it in like this particular format. You don't need to remember anything. You can just set the click listener and you can mention the name of the same. The subsequent part of the code will be predefined. You don't need to worry about it. So as of now, I'll just keep this one thing that we have changed. That is, whenever I click on this one, it will show me hello. So this is the part of the first event listener which I am having. The second set of the listener I am having is for the operators. So I'll keep the decimal as a part of the numeric part. So if I click on the operator, that is addition, subtraction, multiply and divide, I have this operator click. Same way for equal to, I have equal to click, and for the clear button, I have a clear click activity, the clear click event that we are going to work with. So now let's understand the rest of the three. Okay. So now the second one which we are having over here, by mistake, I kept a debugger on, is basically on the operator click. So as you know that whenever user is selecting on a particular number, your data will be stored in the result display string which is there. Now when you click on an operator, it will first of all check that whether you are having something as an input or not. So if you have not selected anything, any number priorly, it will not carry out this task. But if you have already some input predefined, let's say 33 is already predefined, it will check that whether the current input is present or not. If the input is present, you need to format it to proper format, maybe integer or double or anything like that, because the data that we are selecting is a string. So you need to parse it properly. And then what you need to do is you need to get the operator that the user has selected. So as you know that we are we are maintaining two things. One is the input and one is the operator. So that we can on the go know that what user has selected and what user has not. So same way, this number click will store your data. The current operator will be stored by the operator click event. And the third event which we are having is on equal click. So when you click on an equal to sign, it will first of all check that whether you are having some input or not, whether you have selected operator or not. And based on that, it will carry out the task that is of the first and the second value. So if you remember that, before operator, we also have the first value to maintain so that we do not leave out on the second value that the user is entering. And then as soon as the user clicks on the clear button, the rest of the things, the current input, the current operator will all be resetted to the empty strings. So here in the equal to click, we are showing the data back to the user. So these are the four operators that we are having. So in this particular part of code, you see several things which are present. The first thing that you need to remember are basically the components that you are going to work with, whether it is the Android components or whether it is the Java letters that you are going to work with. Now, whether you want to extract those particular components of the Android or not, you need to use find view by ID. And then using this, if you want to set some listers or not, that is, you want to carry out event handling part or not. So subsequently, you need to maintain the event handling code. So this is how the entire calculator works like. So let's head back to the demonstration of the calculator and see this thing parallelly. So what I'll do is, I'll just execute it again and see it on our emulator screen. In the meantime, while I'm doing this particular task, you can have your questions over here. We'll hold on for a few more minutes once the execution is complete to get into those questions and answers. So I'll stop this one. I'll re-execute it. Or rather, I'll close it completely and start a new one. So you can see this run button on the top, which will allow you to run the application that you have created. So since the welcome is my home part or the first screen, you can see, okay, the emulator not found, error on the emulator. Okay. So let's see whether my devices are on or not. Since my devices are not on, I need to set it on first. Okay, so while it is taking a moment to start, we can look through the questions and answers that you are having. Yeah, 6 is the correct text component. Okay. Okay, any questions from your side up till now? Maybe to understand logical part of it or practical part of it. So we can take it while the emulator is being started. Or you want me to go back to any particular screen? Maybe code screen or maybe the PPT screen. Okay, my device is on. Okay, application installed. So now let's click on calculator.
রিসিভ কার্ডগুলো স্কলারশিপ মানে কেন માટે સ્કોલરશિપ ને શું નામ હતું કર્મા હે કર્મા હે તો રિસીવ કાર્ડ તો અત્યારે તું હવે પૂછવા
Can you please
એડમિશન ક્યાંનું
unmute?
થઈ ગયું
So you can see the calculator screen over here. So I have kept the rest of the thing as it is, except there is one change. You can see whenever we click on this, it will show something else. So to begin with our task, we see all the components which are there. I click on a 2 over here and subsequently you will be able to see the 2 on the screen as well. That is on the edit text that we are having. You click on a plus, you can see there is no task being done because when you click on a plus, what you are doing is you are clicking on an operator. So on operator, there is no task to be done. Rather, when you click on an operator, what you do is you maintain the data that the user has entered and you maintain the operator that the user has entered. Now you again click on a plus, it will maintain the data over here of the second value which is there and you click on a plus. will show the answer. Oh, sorry, you click on the equal to, it will show the answer. So these are the standard event handling activities that we can easily configure. We click on a clear, it is showing. Now I click or write 88. Has everyone noticed the difference that where I have clicked? I'm mentioning the data over here. Okay, let me clear it first one more time. I'll come back to this one, 2288. I click on this particular edit text button and then see a hello prompt. I know that this is a numeric field, but however, it is showing me the string. Why? Because I have configured the listener over here. You see. So it's not mandatory that listeners that you are having will work according to the task that you want to achieve. So I always mention that whenever you are using any component, make sure to keep a proper constraint. If you do not mention proper constraint, they might behave in the random way that they are not supposed to. So I have already entered some data. I entered some more data. You can see that the data is being appended only. There is no clear sign. So I'm doing a number click. I'm doing a click on the edit text. It remains as it is. I click on a clear. All things gets resetted and we can work with it. Okay. So I hope the entire calculator application is clear to everyone. If you have any doubts or any queries perspective to this application, we can take it right now. The other applications, we'll discuss it maybe after a break or so. So I can take a questions up till this part if you have any. Any questions from your end or anything you want to maybe if you're facing any difficulty on your end, if you're doing the parallel application development, you can ask. Okay, fine. So we'll take a break over here and maybe we'll come back to the other applications which are there. Maybe the applications regarding login and applications regarding the notifications and everything after the break also. Okay, thank you. I'll stop my screen sharing for a while. I think Branto sir, are you there? Okay, fine. I'll
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello.
hello.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am is there. Just wait for a moment. Rantav
Okay.
sir is there. Hello, Rantav sir. Just a minute, huh, ma'am. Please wait.
Sure. It's okay. No, it's fine. Branta sir, I think we may head to the break now and we'll
Just
begin. Right.
आवाज आ रही है? Just a minute.
Yes. I can hear you.
Ramesh, myself Ramesh, na? Hello.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful session.
Okay.
And thank you for all of participants for active participation in the first session. We will take 1 hour break and next session will start at 1 p.m. Okay.
We'll be continuing this meeting only.
No. Yeah, same meeting will be used for the next session. Same link
So,
will be used, no? And
yes, but I think are we closing this meeting as of now?
just we will close and we have session wise attendance. All the participants just inform ki we have session wise attendance. So you will get the next link for the next session. Another link for the next session. Okay. Now we'll stop here and we will meet at 1 p.m. after 1 hour break. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you once
Sure.
again to
Thank
all
you.
of
Thank
you
you,
for
everyone.
participating in the first session. Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Yes, anyone has any doubts or queries? I'm still here for a minute or so.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now you can leave the meeting. We will meet. Okay. Thank you.